Great. Hello again, everyone who's joining us today, teachers, EIR volunteers, maybe some principals we have joining us. Welcome to the Engineer in Residence program for 2019-2020. We're super excited to have all of you joining us. I think most of you here are probably new to the program. We do sometimes have some of our returning teachers and volunteers joining in as well. So welcome to you if you're an experienced EIR participant. We are looking forward to a great 2019-2020 program year. And excited to kind of bring you along on what it means to be a part of the Engineer in Residence program. So just moving right into what we're going to cover today. So just to give you a bit of an overview of the time frame for the day, we're going to probably spend about the next 2 hours covering some of the background of the program, the information that's going to be really critical for you to kind of set you up for success. All the stuff you want to know for what this program is all about. So that's going to take us probably about 2 hours. And then what we've done is built in a bit of a break in that in the day today. So from probably about noon to 1. That's going to be a time that we have dedicated for those of you who have your EIR program partners on the call together. It's time for you to connect independently. So I'll walk you through what that means as we get there. For those of you who don't have your partners available today, it'll be some time for you to grab a quick break and some lunch. And then what we'll do is reconnect again at 1. And that's when I'll open the lines up and we'll do just some Q&A time. So that if there's anything we didn't cover in this beginning section, you'll have an opportunity to bring it forward during that time. So the first section of the day, we're going to do some introduction. We're going to talk about our goals. Like I said, give you an overview. You'll get some really practical tools and tips. We're going to talk about best practices, and then that match connection time, and then the Q&A section. And there's the agenda again, just in case you didn't get it the first time or the second time we went through it. But there's the overview for you. So an introduction. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about engineering messaging. It's really important to us to connect to the why of this program and the work that is happening as a result. So we're going to spend some time on that. Talking about how some strategy behind how we can build really effective plans for that EIR program time in the classroom. And then those tips from experienced EIRs, some best practices and next steps, and then we'll have that break and then the Q&A wrap up. So getting right into it, and for those of you who are just joining, I apologize. I don't think I introduced myself very formally at the beginning of this presentation, but my name is Rebecca White. So you have probably all received some form of email from me in the last, 3 to 4 months at some point. So it's always great to connect with the program participants in ways other than just email. So I'm excited to connect with all of you today. Unfortunately, Erica Lee Garcia, who is she's the founder of Engineers of Tomorrow, she was unable to join us for this event today, but I'm sure we will have opportunities to connect up over the course of the program year in some way. So hello. Before we kind of dive right in, just want to take a second and say hello. Very quickly about myself for those of you who don't know me. So I am the CEO of Engineers of Tomorrow. Engineers of Tomorrow is the organization that runs the EIR program, which was founded by Professional Engineers Ontario in 1998. I personally, graduated from Queen's with a chemical engineering degree, so I do connect to our EIR program volunteers in that way. But I am the product of two teacher parents. And so I also have a very deep connection with all the teachers that are online today. So kind of a neat mashup of both worlds there, worlds colliding, I guess. So yeah, and so hopefully we'll all get some time to get to know all of you. As we move through today and the whole year, as the program proceeds. So starting off with our introduction, what is an EIR? What is the EIR program? So what is an EIR? So a role model, like these are just some words we've kind of thrown out there. These are words that when we've kind of thought about the roles that the EIR volunteers play, that we've come up with, but they're also words that have come to us when we get feedback from all of you, from the teachers and from our EIRs. These are the things that they identify with as an EIR. So a role model. This one I like to use a lot. I really think that one of the unique one of the things that sets the EIR program apart from other experiences is that the EIR is assigned to the class for the whole school year. So that gives them the opportunity to have these repeat visits into a classroom and establish a bit more of that role model identity with the students in the class. So I think that's really special, a really great opportunity, one that we want to try and just be aware of and think about that as EIRs, that is a hat that we are wearing when we're in the classroom. Kids are really looking up to us and the work that we do. EIRs are also ambassadors for engineering and STEM. So I mean, obviously, engineer in residence and a program that is based on professional engineers going into classrooms. We obviously are kind of popping the E out in STEM, but it's pretty much impossible to only talk about the E without talking about the relationship between the S, the T, the E, and the M. So thinking of EIRs as ambassadors, meaning that we're there to we're there to open some doors and open some eyes for the next generation, and with that comes that almost like a responsibility, because once we sort of crack that door open even just a little bit, we have that responsibility to kind of follow through and let them know just what is possible with the engineering and STEM professions and their futures. Stereotype breakers, definitely. We want all of our EIRs to be stereotype breakers. So for those of you who may have participated in some of our summer webinars that we hosted, we talk about how to do engineering outreach in a strategic way that will be inclusive and promote diversity. So that is a really important characteristic to consider when EIRs are going into a classroom. An ally for teachers. Ally, I could put all kinds of different words in there for ally, but ally, support, resource, partner. So the EIR program is really designed to be an enhancement to the classroom experience. It's not another thing that has to get done in the school year. The EIR is there to support the teacher in delivering an amazing year for the students in their class. So that's another one of my favorite things about the program, is that it's really not prescriptive in the content that you have to deliver. It's completely customizable to be able to fit in with the needs of that teacher and the needs of that class and the needs of the curriculum. So really, truly allies for the teachers that are your partners. I'm just an engineer who cares. Obviously, all the engineers that are on the line today are volunteering your time. We are so grateful for that. So you are the ones that have stepped up and see the value in going in and creating these experiences for students. So EIRs really do care. We hear all the time from our EIR volunteers how much of an impact the program has on their own identity, and how much they enjoy the experiences, and it reignites their passion and all kinds of really great stuff. And it's just an example of what's possible. So I'll go through some of the we've got some numbers to show you in terms of scale of what's possible, but just also that idea of letting this next generation know that you're in school, you're working hard, there's just a lot to take in, but you're an example as an EIR. You are an example of where that can lead. So just recognizing that that can be kind of the light that's shined on you. So what is the program? So it is a volunteer-based program, grassroots model, you'll sometimes hear us say, and it's dedicated to inspiring students in STEM. So if I had to break it down into a one-word answer, there you go, that's what you get. It began as just an idea back in 1997. That there could be some really kind of magical collaboration that can happen when we match up teachers with volunteer engineers and students. And so that was kind of how the program was born, with that idea in mind. And as I mentioned, the program was founded by Professional Engineers Ontario. And now is subsequently run by us at Engineers of Tomorrow. And so we have a really strong ties with Professional Engineers Ontario, with PEO. We are very closely connected to all of the chapters. And then obviously the members, so the PEngs and EITs that are on the line with us today. So just really grateful to be able to connect with you as PEO members to be a part of this program. And the last bullet's pretty important. The program is offered free of charge to elementary and secondary schools across Ontario. The program, I'll mention, obviously it says right there Ontario, and that's because this program is restricted to the boundaries of Ontario because it was founded by Professional Engineers Ontario. The regulatory bodies that govern the licensing of engineers, they are managed provincially for those teachers that are on the line. So each province has its own regulatory body, like PEO. So that's why those boundaries were put in place, because this is a PEO-based program. That said, I will let you know one of the big things that we are working on this year, going in probably over the next 3 years, is to try and scale the program nationally. So it's always something that we've been thinking about. So we are actively working on that national scale programming over, like I said, the next kind of 1 to 3 years. So something to kind of keep your eyes out for. You might hear us talking about it again, or maybe hopefully celebrating some successes related to that kind of strategic plan. So some core values related to that I guess kind of define the Engineer in Residence program. Experiential, inclusive, and real. So you can see what we did there. We matched them up with the EIR. So I thought that was pretty neat. Easy, makes it easy to remember, right? So experiential, because we're creating positive experience for students around STEM. And what we're really doing is applying that academic learning to possibilities through this real life person coming into the classroom and talking about real world impact. Inclusive, I mentioned that's a big one for us. One of the things you'll hear us say a lot, there's a place for you. So there's a place for you in engineering. Just opening the doors, you're welcome, and trying to get that message into the minds of the next generation. And then the why behind that is that we really truly need to have a diverse group of thinkers that are going to be the ones that are having to solve the complex challenges of the 21st century. The easy problems have mostly been solved already, so these real complex problems that we're faced with now, they really need a diversity of minds on them to be able to come up with innovative solutions. And then real, so real engineers, real application of academic learning, and then real impact. We do like to talk about impact. We like to talk about creating positive engineering or positive STEM experiences. We measure those things. I can tell you that we just ran through our numbers for the last year. And it's a cumulative total, but we are now up to over 300,000 positive STEM or engineering experiences that have been created. So we're pretty proud of that number, pretty excited about that number, and we want to connect all of you here on the call today and everyone in this program, anyone that we kind of come into contact with to the idea that you are part of something big. So going into a classroom or bringing an EIR into your classroom for a visit 1 month or a visit for a few months or one, even more than that, it might seem like a small practice, but really truly it adds up, right? So if we got everybody doing that we have planned for this year, that's going to add up to another 50,000 positive STEM and engineering experiences for 2019-2020. So just knowing that you are, it's not isolated. That's the word I'm looking for, isolated. It's not an isolated experience. You're part of this big shift, this big this shift in momentum that we are seeing around this kind of impact work. So here's a little bit of history around the program. So as I mentioned, it was an idea in 1997, and that idea turned into a pilot in 1998. It was just 5 schools in and around the Toronto area is how it started. And then from there continued to grow. So 1998, they basically tripled in size up to 14 schools. 2002, they did some kind of networking community expanding, talking to local museums and science centers and just connecting a bit more broadly with the kind of STEM youth outreach world. Fast forward ahead about 12 years, and EIR program was getting to be much more established, so 75 schools across Ontario. At that point, that is actually the place where we came into the picture at Engineers of Tomorrow in 2014. We were at that point brought in as the service provider with PEO to manage the program. So so we have obviously a lot more visibility in what's went on since 2014. So in 2015, we got that number up to 90 schools across Ontario. And then a big, huge jump between 2015 and 2016. We had a superstar, amazing summer student with us that year. You might hear me talk about her in other places because we're pretty proud of her. Her name is Vanessa Raponi, and she has since graduated from engineering school at McMaster and now works as an engineer for Spin Master, a local Toronto or a toy company at the Toronto office. But she did some really hard work to basically, again, almost double the number of schools that we had in the program in 2016. And then we've sort of hovered around this 200 number of EIRs and classrooms participating in the program for the last few years, and that's basically where we are today. So we put some numbers up there. You can see 194 in 2018, 189 in 2019. So it sort of covers around there. I do, sometimes EIRs have to step back or a teacher moves on somewhere else, and those numbers can fluctuate, obviously. But the big picture of it is that, kind of moving from this idea in 1997 and piloting that, experimenting, testing it in 1998 with 5 schools, and now it's showing up across Ontario in 200 classrooms 20 years later. So pretty nice story to tell. So here comes some numbers. I know this is my engineering identity coming out a little bit, but I love to see numbers. So some stats on the 2019-2020 participation for EIRs in the classrooms. 57% of those are PEngs, so that means they're fully licensed engineers. And 43% of those are EITs, which are engineers in training, which are the individuals that are very close to becoming PEngs. They're on their way to becoming PEngs. They've finished their degree and they're working through the process to actually get their full PEng license. So interesting split there. We have kind of all stages, all different, like a really nice spectrum of engineering experience that our volunteers are bringing to the program. And then in terms of gender, we have 69% male volunteers, EIR volunteers, and 31% female volunteers. That may look like a low number of female to male volunteers, but we're extremely proud of that number. The reason being that licensed engineers across Canada, that the number of licensed engineers across Canada that are female is very lower, is a lot lower than that. It usually is around, I think it's currently around 11%. It obviously, again, hovers a little bit. And there is some significant effort happening right now with some of the programs at the national level to increase the percentage of female licensed engineers, newly licensed engineers. And their goal is to try and get that number up to 30% by the year 2030. So you may see some reference to the 30 by 30 challenge, or the 30 by 30 initiative, sorry, which is sponsored by Engineers Canada. So we're pretty proud of these numbers because we're already there. We're already at 30. Basically, we're just above our 30%, the 30% goal that is set by the national organization. Now, obviously, we're always looking to try and try and continue to improve and balance that number a little more. But in light of only having access to about 11% of the demographic of engineers being female, I think we're doing pretty well. A little bit of information for you, kind of looking ahead for what you can expect in the calendar year. I probably should have organized this starting at September, just because that's where we are in the calendar now. But so look at kind of halfway through that list there. You can see September and October is the time for orientation and first visits to happen. So welcome to orientation. That's what you're all here for today. And then if you haven't done so already, I strongly recommend getting your first visits planned. First meeting with your teachers, and then planning those visits out for the year as far in advance as possible. In January, you will hear from us with just a mid-year check-in. So the design of this program is really to empower you as teachers and you as EIR volunteers to kind of take ownership into your own classroom experiences. So we're not going to be you're not going to be hearing from us kind of every week or on some sort of we're not going to be, let's put it this way, we're not going to be filling up your inboxes. We really rely on you to let us know if there's something you need. So definitely if there's something going on and you're struggling, or maybe you're looking for an idea for an activity, or maybe you had just a really awesome visit, we love to hear about that too. So please be the ones to initiate that contact with us if needed between September and January, because otherwise you're not going to hear from us until the middle of the year. Occasionally there are things that come across my desk or my inbox that are a really unique experience, and I might want to get the word out, so I might just sort of send an e-blast out. But like I said, if there's something you need, please be the one to initiate that reach out to us. Then in April is when we start thinking about what's going to happen the next year. So the 2020-2021 program. So we open up the applications, the application forms online. We get busy doing all kinds of recruiting to volunteer engineers and teachers, school boards across Ontario. And then we get busy giving everybody a call. Usually it's a phone call. We try and connect with you in some way, either email or phone call. All teachers, all EIRs, we want to hear about your experiences from this past year, so from 2019-2020. We want to collect some feedback. We want to collect some information. We are always looking to continuously improve, so that is really valuable information for us. We collect up receipts. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get through the presentation, why you're going to want to be saving your receipts. And then letting us know what your plans are for the following year. So if, hopefully you're going to have an amazing experience this year, and you're going to want to do it again next year. So when we reach out to you in the spring, all you have to do is let us know that you want to continue or you don't, and we will get that set up for you. And then also in the spring, May, June is when we do all the matching for the following program year. We like to get it all done, as you have all experienced. We like to get that all done before the school year ends, so that you have the summer to kind of get your head around it, and then things can launch in September as quickly as you are ready for. And then throughout the summer, for those of you who are available and interested, we do always host a summer webinar series. it is mostly designed for new volunteers that are kind of onboarding. I think there's one session we do just for teachers if they're interested in kind of doing an intro, a shorter intro to the program. And those are also recorded and available on our website. If you don't, if you can't make it, or you want to take your summer to just be outside and be enjoying the summertime, you can always refer back to those as needed. More numbers for you. So this is just showing a breakdown of basically the EIR program landscape, broken down by region and chapter. So the Professional Engineers Ontario has a chapter structure. And there are, oh shoot, the number just went out of my head. I think it's 26. If someone can correct me if I'm wrong, chapters across Ontario. So you can see where we have matches, where we have some gaps as well. So we do have wait lists. We have occasions where we have engineers that can't be matched, and we have schools that can't be matched, and it usually is an issue with geography. So our biggest enemy for this program is geography, because obviously we're just trying to find opportunities to connect people up locally. So if someone's, for example, we have cases where someone might not have a car, so they can only reach schools where they're on the within the transit system or whatever. But that's so the kind of the story there is there are gaps which we look at as potential. So still lots of great potential to continue to grow this program even further. And then here's the rest of the breakdown of what's going on in each of the chapters or regions across Ontario. I will share these. So again, I'm recording this session. It'll be available as a replay if you care to refer back to it. I will also post up the slide deck, because sometimes you just want to scan through the slides and not have to kind of find the place in the presentation where we were talking about it. So if you want to refer back to this at any time, you're welcome to, or just send me an email and ask, because as I mentioned, these numbers, they do fluctuate, they do change. We do have I will also mention, maybe this is a good place to talk about it, is we have some support systems in place in some of these PEO chapters. It's a relatively new program. I'm hesitating to use the word program because we're calling the EIR program a program, but it's a relatively new opportunity where we have EIR chapter leaders in place in some of the different areas. So, for example, we have an EIR chapter leader in Ottawa who is sort of the on the ground go-to connector that I'm well connected with, and he knows the whole landscape of what's going on in Ottawa. He knows how many engineers are active there and how many schools are active, and what schools are still looking for engineers and what engineers are still looking for schools. So he's got really good visibility on that. He's doing things like organizing meetups and identifying local resources that could enhance the program even further. So that's a really, so in some cases, if there's, you have questions about what's going on, if you're in an area where we have a chapter leader in place, then I'll probably be looping them in as well, because it's just a way to enhance the support for the program even further. And I don't think I mentioned, but Engineers of Tomorrow, we are a small team. We do really rely on the support of the grassroots model. I mentioned the support of the engineer volunteers and you as teachers to be the ones that are kind of bringing this program to life. So anytime we can find a way to enhance that support, we're always excited to experiment with that and explore those ideas. Okay, so I've been talking at you for like 40 minutes now. I wanted to give some time now to have some interaction. So for those of you who are on with us through your computer or maybe your phone, I think even with your phone you should be able to access it as well. There is a chat function in the GoToMeeting portal. So I would love for everyone to use the chat box right now, and I would like to hear from you. I have two questions because we've got EIRs on the call today and we've got teachers, and I guess if there's principals too. Why do you want to be an EIR, or why did you want to be an EIR, and why did you want to have an EIR in your classroom? So maybe just start your message with just I'm an EIR or I'm a teacher, so we know, and then put your, take a second to think about it. And I would just love to hear some of those from you, some of that feedback. So I'll just pause for a second and let everybody have some time to kind of think about that, reflect for a minute or two, and then pop your answers in the chat. Sorry, I just paused there for a second, so I just want to make sure the recording was going again. There we go. So yeah, as I was saying, you are really part of something big when it comes to the impact of what's going on here. So wanted to take a second and just talk about some of the other goals, other than just increasing the number of matches we have, or increasing the percentage of female EIR participants. Like, we really do want to go beyond the numbers. The numbers don't tell the whole story. For those of you who are connected with me on LinkedIn, you'll see I just put a post up this week about the numbers not telling the whole story. So just wanted to take a second and talk about what some of these goals are. So changing public perception of engineering and technology careers, and just kind of general awareness. So educating the public on these different ideas. I mentioned we sometimes refer to engineering as a stealth profession. So, I live in a town, and there's it's fully supported with all the infrastructure that goes into all the things that we need as a town, the roads, the bridges, the water system, the electricity, and beyond. And you don't see the engineering that goes in behind that. I've spent a good amount of time connecting up with my local community members, and just hearing their stories, and finding ways to bring those stories to light. Talk to the town engineer. What do you do, and what can how can we connect this to the young community members? There's a lot of problems that towns have to solve, and it's really I've heard some really amazing stories about how they've engaged with youth in different ways to help solve some of those problems, to use engineering and to use STEM learning to be able to solve those problems. And what's really special about that is that it's something really relevant. So it's going to create a really big emotional connection and an impact for those young students to know that they've been a part of something that has an impact on their own local community. So breaking stereotypes, we heard some of that in some of the responses, that breaking stereotypes, raising awareness, enhancing the profile of the engineering profession. Just really, it comes down to a little bit to kind of the marketing of the engineering profession. It really is more than just bridge building. Sorry, Matt. I know you're doing the bridge building workshops, but whenever we get the opportunity to survey students or even just talk to young kids about what they think engineers do or who do you think engineers are, the most prevalent thing we hear is that engineers build bridges, or we'll hear engineers work in factories. So the opportunity to change those messages is a big goal of this program. And then getting rid of the mystery around engineering and technology. You know, I think of some of the slogans. I think of this Apple slogan, "It just works." Then that's great, and it's really fantastic that it just works. But there's so much that goes in behind the scenes there around engineering technology to make it just work. And like I said, we have the roads we need, we have the infrastructure we need, but nobody knows. Well, I mean, some people know, but the students don't know how it gets there. My kids bring home their yearbooks every year, and I always love to look at the kindergarten section because at our school they'll ask the kindergarten students, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And so it's the cutest. There's all kinds of really cute answers, but what I mostly see is a lot of policeman, firefighter, doctor, teacher. They're talking about the things they see, and so they just don't know, right? You just don't know what you don't know. Kind of take for granted that that you live in a community that you have all these great things in place that have got there because of engineering and technology. And then, of course, creating productive partnerships. One of the things I've talked about some of my favorite things about the EIR program, but one of my other favorite things about the EIR program is that it's not about reinventing the wheel. We love to collaborate whenever we can. So whenever we come across programs or activities or ideas that are phenomenal, so Up for the Challenge is a great example. We love to try and find any way we can to bring that into the classroom, to engage with maybe our EIR volunteers and have them, give them access to a new lesson plan or activity, or provide that to the teachers, or we'll do webinars maybe with other great organizations in collaboration that we think would be of value to schools and teachers, and getting involved in any way we can to be building those relationships and connections, and just keep connecting those dots, because these are all great initiatives kind of working towards the same big goals. I just saw John put in a chat about thinking that engineers drove trains, and you're right. That is like that used to be, I'll say, the third most common thing we would hear, that engineers drive trains. I'm hearing less and less of that these days. I think that's just because, for one, I think some of the trains we have, the kids just don't see that engineers drive the trains, and maybe they're busy Ubering instead of taking trains these days. But yes, that is a very common one. Engineers drive trains. A little bit more about us as engineers of tomorrow, just so you have kind of an understanding of our story and know what we're all about. So we were actually incubated. We're a venture. We started with Engineers Without Borders Canada in 2013. We were so grateful for the time that we were able to learn and grow and develop relationships as part of the community of Engineers Without Borders Canada. But as of September 2018, so we just celebrated our 1-year birthday, we exited from EWD Canada and became our own nationally incorporated not-for-profit organization. So we're pretty proud of that. We've got 1 year under our belts now with some really big plans, big ideas, and strategy moving forward. So what do? We partner with engineering companies, professional associations, educators, you name it. I just talked about how much we love collaborating. So we partner with like-minded thinkers, might be a good way to say it, to transform the engineering profession. We're, looking for more diversity, celebrating the ability to learn from failure, innovate, and solve the most important problems of the 21st century. I talked a little bit about those complex problems and how we really believe that we do need that diversity, those diverse thinkers to be able to solve those complex problems of the 21st century. There are some great frameworks in place to be able to connect up to those big global problems. I'll mention it now, and I'm not sure if I have a link to it later in the presentation. If not, I can share the links. But if you haven't checked it out, or if you aren't aware of it, two great frameworks that we like to refer to help connect students up to the kind of the big grand problems of the 21st century. The first one is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So they have a great website. You can go on there and just see there's 17 of them that have been identified. And so it's just great to just be aware of them and make students aware of them, and then talk about how the activity you're doing, or what you're learning in school, or as an EIR, maybe the work that you do is having an impact on some of those sustainable development goals. And then the other great one is the Grand Challenges. And that one, I believe, is through the National Academy of Engineering. I'll double check that one. But they're similar to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are these grand challenges that have been identified. So just a really neat way to kind of relate and connect to these big global ideas. And then we believe in the power of engineering outreach to shape the future. So this model, and even to go above and beyond that, I'll say we believe in the power of grassroots engineering outreach to shape the future. And it goes on to say that's why we do world-class engineering outreach, and we inspire and instill capacity in others to do the same. So I put the grassroots in there because it's not something we could do on our own. And not only that, the true power, the true magic of the model of grassroots outreach is that we're connecting the dots in this really magical way of, having real live engineers talking to young minds, and hopefully inspiring those students to think and recognize that there's a place for them in engineering. But it also has an impact on those role models, on those engineering ambassadors as well. So really neat kind of systems level thinking we're doing there about the impact that happens as a result of grassroots engineering outreach. We've got the word world class in there, and that's deliberate as well. We are always connecting and trying to find the latest research on how to do outreach in innovative ways. So those of you who participate in our diverse and inclusive messaging webinar in the summer might remember we talked about some very specific, very deliberate interventions that can be pretty easily integrated into your outreach method or method of engaging with a class. And so we're kind of trying to keep everything kind of turn research into action, or mobilize this knowledge that exists with all these great studies and the great research that's happening on how to engage and connect with the next generation in these really unique and world-class ways. And then for us, ultimately, we're saying that we're about shaping public perception. We think if we can do that, we really can change the future. So pretty big ideas there. If you want to find out more about us as an organization, you can find us at engineersoftomorrow.ca. So here's my face. You've been hearing a lot of my voice. For those of you who haven't seen my face before, there I am on the right-hand side. You can, and if you go to our website, the engineersoftomorrow.ca, we have a little About Us section where you can read a little bit more about us. This is our core leadership team at Engineers of Tomorrow. We have Erica Lee Garcia, who is the founder. She graduated actually from materials and metallurgical engineering at Queen's. She spent a bit of time working in automotive manufacturing, and then spent some time in mining as well. And she is based in Waterloo these days. As I mentioned, I graduated from Queen's as a chemical engineer. I spent some time in the pharmaceutical world. Spent a good amount of time I literally got to make medicine and save people's lives, so I thought that was pretty neat. And food as well, a little bit of time in food. So anyways, yeah, there we are. Always nice to put a face to the emails and the voices that you hear. And definitely go, connect with us. You've got our emails or through our website to find out more. So here's a big question that we get. There's some, maybe think about these as sort of FAQs, but what do we do in classrooms with the EIR program? So I talked about this a little bit, about how the EIR program is really about empowering the teachers and the volunteer engineers to take ownership and really have the ability to make this program make this program your own, I'll say, but design an experience that will be the best possible experience for you as an EIR, for you as a teacher, for your class. So it really is up to you, the EIR, and you, the teacher, to decide what it is you want to teach. And of course, we're looking to be a support, so not an extra thing that has to happen. But how can we support the curriculum with some, great hands-on activities? Or on the other side of it too is when we can connect up what's happening in the classroom with the interests or the experiences or the background of the EIR, just to really make it relevant and kind of bring alive those real world connections. We do have a program guide. It's called a lesson guide on this slide. We usually refer to it as a program guide. It is available online, and it actually has a lot of the content that we cover here today, but it also has a bunch of activities that are laid out. I think I'm going to actually show them to you, laid out in a great way to show you, what are the curriculum connections, what are the grades, what are the materials you need, what are the steps you have to do. It's got it all. It's all there. It's a great place to start. And a lot of people use them, year after year, and that's fantastic. But a lot of people use it as a source of inspiration as well, because as I mentioned, you can really make this your own, which is really exciting and fun. Sometimes depending on the EIR's availability or interest, or just energy levels maybe. But the EIRs can support after school programs, or I've seen we have some EIRs that come in and help to run programs over the lunch hour, like a robotics club or other clubs that are in the different schools. I've seen them come into kind of the bigger picture. School will run some sort of competition or a science fair or something like that, and the EIR will come in and support it as a judge, or they might help coordinate it. I have helped coordinate what did they call it? It was like a STEAM fair that they ran after school in the spring one year. I was kind of behind the scenes helping come up with all the different activities, and so there's lots that can be done. Or field trips is another one I've seen happen. We've got some great EIRs that work at some pretty neat places. So if the opportunity is the opportunity is there to go and see the EIR in their habitats, it's a great experience for the students to get out of the classroom. Another FAQ big question that we get is, how do I teach an engaging lesson? So that's usually asked in some form or another, but how do I actually do this in a way that's going to be really engaging, really different, really create a unique experience for the students, for the next generation? I apologize, teachers, this might be very obvious to you in some cases, but for a lot of the engineer volunteers we have that are just kind of coming on board with us, we find it's really helpful to be able to break things down. So we've got a little slide here called the anatomy of a lesson. And this is designed to be a framework so that you can lean on it when you're kind of getting into, your first, your second, maybe your third and fourth visits to the classroom, but it really then becomes second nature. So we've got, starting with a hook, something to catch the attention of the students, and then spending some time kind of developing the ideas, learning, reviewing some information, and then obviously the bulk of the time gets spent doing the activity, whatever it is that you got planned. That's where the fun stuff is, right? That's where the magic happens. The hands-on stuff is so, so powerful. But definitely budget your time to make sure that that you don't end with kids, basically don't leave things kind of hanging. Budget your time so you have some space at the end of the engagement to be able to close the loop. So linking up to engineering in some way. So maybe some real world examples. Maybe it connects up to something you talked about before. Maybe it connects to your job or in some way. And then do some debrief and reinforcement of what it is that you were talking about. And as I mentioned, so we've many of these resources, online sample lessons, they're on the EIR website for you to have access to and get you started. So this is where I was planning to show you what this looks like. So the website, you can either use the link, that big long one that you see at the top of the screen there, or you can just type in EIR.ca and it will take you to the same place. And then there is a subsection called resources. You can see this one is the picture. This is actually my son. And he has, he's got a pegboard wall here that we had some, I think it was literally some stuff I found in my garage. And we set it up. This was actually the STEAM night that I worked with my kids' school on. We had this set up in a classroom and just a tub full of random materials and some marbles, and the kids just figured out their own way to make a giant marble maze. It was a lot of fun. But let me switch over to the website because I wanted to show you what the program guide looks like. So this is what it looks like. As I mentioned, there's a bunch of stuff in here that we're talking about right now. So the whole, I think is about the first sort of 10 or 15 pages is all about, you know, how it works. These are the steps, some tips, but there's all this information we're going to cover today. But it's there as a reference if you want to go back to it. Planning your year, more tips, lots of great stuff in there. Good things to remember. Sourcing materials, some speaking tips. Here we go. So this is what in our program guide, this is what the activities look like. This is how it's laid out. So you can see this one, the 3 little pigs. It's targeted or recommended, might be a good way to say it, at grade 1 for grade 1. There's a little description here. Assessment categories are broken down here. Gives you an idea of the time frame that you need to budget for. And then the topics. So here for grade 1, understanding structures and mechanisms. It lists out and connects to the sort of overall expectations and then the specific expectations that are connected to the activity, or that can be connected to it. The materials that you're going to need. And then I talked about the hook in the anatomy of a lesson. So here's the suggested hook for this particular example is reading the story of the 3 little pigs. And then ask the students what the pigs used for their house, for sleeping, for protection from wind, to hide from wolves. So you can really kind of bring the story to life a little bit there. And then some of that development work. So we talked about the learning. So you get the hook and then you do a little bit of development leading up to the actual activity. So you can talk about, in this case, discussing the properties of the 3 different building materials. So what are the properties of straw and wood, aka popsicle sticks, or bricks, aka Lego in this case. Talk about the different material properties. What are some advantages? What are some disadvantages? Depending on, I mean, this one I mentioned is for grade 1, but I also mentioned that you can use these activities as inspiration or as a starting point. So I have seen done very successfully an activity like this with older students, and so you can integrate different ideas. So maybe you talk about sustainability, maybe you talk about the financials, maybe you assign dollar amounts to like a budget to the different materials. So there's ways you can get creative and bring in different elements and aspects of learning and development in these activities. Then it'll go through the application. So this is sort of, consider these activities in this program guide as like, this is these are the proven activities. We know these ones work. If you follow them, they're gonna have a great experience. But again, feel free to kind of make it your own. So there's the application, and then it gives you also some ideas on what to talk about on wrap up, how to kind of close the loop, bring things home. And sort of solidify that experience. So just want to take a second and show you guys that. So there's all kind, you can see that I'll scroll very quickly. You're not going to be able to see everything, but there's all kinds of activities in here that you can go back and have a look at and continue to come back to. I've seen some people will print this out and have it as a reference, but we do have it online, so you don't have to print it every time. Okay, let me flip back to where we were here. Okay, so just some tips on running a good lesson. So and teachers, please, and EIRs, please talk to teachers because they are the experts in these creating these connections and experiences. But like I said, for EIRs, it can sometimes be the first time they're going in and talking to a group of students. So we want to set you up for success as well. So here's just a few tips with the kids. Just think about asking questions instead of just giving the answers. We want to just get them thinking, right? So you can, they'll come up with you with a problem, and so try and, instead of thinking about helping them solve that problem, think about what questions you can ask them to get them thinking about a possible solution. Incorporate learnings that engage the senses and call on different types of intelligences. We'll talk a little bit about the different types of intelligences, but the different senses that are involved in, like I said, hands-on stuff is extremely magical and powerful for creating an impact. So touching, but everyone learns and experiences things in different ways. So it's just a fun opportunity and invitation to be creative and think about how you can engage with the senses in these different experiences to create different impact. Try to relate new ideas to something your students can relate to in their own lives. So, this is an area, if you don't have your own kids, an area I would definitely encourage teachers, if you could help with some suggestions on what is it that grade 4 kids are into these days. Is it still Minecraft, or is that really out of date now? Like, what's the cool new thing? What are all the students talking about? And being able to connect those ideas to something that they care about is where that sweet spot is, and that's where those experiences are going to stick. Give recognition and encouragement, especially when things don't go as planned. We talked about, as engineers of tomorrow, celebrating failure. I had my youngest son's teacher was telling us that she always, anytime they make a mistake or something fails, she talks to them about, like, well, that's amazing. Your brain just grew when that happened. So I thought it was a really cute way of putting it, making it relevant to, I think he was in grade 1 at the time. But being there to support and encourage, and let them know that you believe in them. There is some research that shows that if you lower the standards, so I'm going to use bridge building as an example, just because that seems to be the topic of the day. But if you're doing an activity where bridges have to support, I don't know, say 2 pounds, and there's a student or a team that's struggling with it, there's research to show that if you go up to that student or that team and say, well, that's okay, yours just has to support 1 pound. Like, if you lower the standards for that student or for that team, it has actually the opposite effect of what you were intending. You were intending to try and help them out, but the message that comes across is, I'm not good enough. They don't believe in me. They're, making exceptions for me. Versus going up to someone and saying, wow, this is a great start. You guys, I know that if you put your heads together, you can come up with the answer. I've seen you do it before. You're great problem solvers. I know you can get through this. And just holding the standards, being encouraging, giving recognition where you can find it is really powerful. Encouraging self-reflection in students, while discouraging criticism and negative self-talk. So I know I see it in my own kids that, I'm terrible, I can't do this, never gonna happen. But so discouraging that kind of a situation from happening, but getting them to think, so what could you do differently? Or what if you thought about it this way? And really getting them to try and open their minds. So another one this has come up a little bit already. We know we've got some EIRs that are on with us today or interested in breaking down some stereotypes, misconceptions, myths about engineering. So how do we do that? How can we go about doing that? So messaging is such a powerful tool. Strategic messaging is a very, very powerful tool. It's not an accident. It's deliberately planned into the outreach that we promote, that we are involved in. And so why? We like to talk about the whys always. So why? Why is messaging important? So lack of understanding about engineering, about the role that engineers play, about the role of engineering in society and technology. The just general lack of understanding, it increases the risk of that disconnect between what society needs and the engineering solutions that will be helpful. So the messages are a key part of kind of bridging that. When we define what it means to work in engineering, it's a real unique opportunity for us to reflect. I was just talking about self-reflection for the students, but it's a great opportunity as engineering professionals. It's a great opportunity for us to reflect on our own profession's purpose, importance, and diversity. I talked about the role of the EIR in the classroom, one of them being an ambassador for the profession. And to be an ambassador, we have to really embrace our purpose, our profession's purpose, and believe in it. So when we connect to those messages, then it's an opportunity to do that. And then just that further emphasis on the why. Why we like to keep asking why as much as we can. Get it into a habit of it, a practice of asking why. But that emphasis on the why of engineering, the meaning behind it, its values, the emotional connection to the people involved, the engineering community, and the community, in general, more broadly. And just connecting it up to the human impact is all just going to make things seem more accessible and feel more accessible than than those students might believe. So what do we hear these days? So where kind of what's the current state of the stereotypes we need to break down, or the messages? Like, what are youth hearing? What are the messages that come across? I mentioned we like to do surveys whenever we can, but I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise. I'm sure many of you probably heard some of these messages as well. Teachers, I'm sure you hear this from your students too. And it's not that these are untrue, but I'll say it's really more of a part truth, right? It's not the full picture. It's like I was saying about numbers don't tell the whole story. Well, these messages don't tell the whole story either. So that can be damaging when you don't have the whole picture of something. So what do we hear these days? Well, these days and probably going back many years, but you're good at math and science, so you should study engineering. That's what I heard. I'll be very transparent. That's what I heard as a grade 12 student. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just told, hey, well, you're good at math and science, so why don't you go study engineering? And I mean, fortunately, I was able to connect to some of these bigger whys behind the profession and think about those, the impact of, like I said, being able to work somewhere where I made medicine and got to save people's lives. But not everybody's able to do that. And really, when we're talking to youth, it's about more than that, right? It's about connecting them with that full picture, that full idea. Engineering just equals scientific aptitude, or it just equals building stuff. I talked about, we hear, engineers, oh, they build bridges. Or there it is, there's the driving trains. Engineers drive trains. And the point is, it's not just equal to that. It's like I said, so much more. It goes above and beyond just scientific aptitude or just building stuff, and definitely driving trains. So I'm going to take another opportunity um, to hear from you guys. Again, I've been talking at you for a while, so I would love to engage with you again for a few minutes. So I would love to hear about your own experiences. So what are some of the default messages that maybe for our EIRs that you received about engineering? What teachers, what do you hear your students saying about engineering? Where do they get? Where do you think they get those messages? And in what ways are they just not the full picture? In what ways are they an incomplete or maybe inaccurate idea? So I'll just pause for a minute and let you guys reflect on that, and then put your answers in the chat box. So, I'm not going to talk really much about this slide. These are just, like I said, you have this as a resource to come back to, but some messaging ideas for your reference. You can kind of scan through them there and see about some of the other things that we can say above and beyond just if you're good at math and science, you should go into engineering. And again, coming back to this why, I've already talked about, we need a diverse set of thinkers to solve the complex challenges that we have in front of us, that we have facing us. So this was a really neat model where it kind of is illustrating this A bubble that you see shaded in light blue there. This represents the students that are going to self-select into the engineering profession. Those are the kids that you can tell just, you spend 5 minutes with them and oh, you're going to be an engineer. And then the engineering profession, in terms of messaging, outreach messaging and strategy, is if we have those same, those kids with that natural tendency to self-select into the profession, they're going to recycle those same messages back into this broad pool of potential talented and capable students that we have. So you're just going to end up in this kind of stuck in this loop, the dark blue arrows there. And then we may go, there might be a little bit of expansion above and beyond with the, some of the outliers maybe is that lighter green arrow, the diverse entries into the profession. So you might be able to crack a little bit into that C bubble that are the students who potentially could choose engineering but are going into other things. So what we want to get to, our future state, is a whole bunch of A's and A primes and double prime and triple prime there, where we have this, all these other thinkers that are choosing engineering as a profession for their own reasons, and as a result, hopefully, of some of the great messaging that comes out of things like the EIR program. So and then bringing those messages back, so it becomes this really instead of being stuck in this loop that just reinforces the students who are the A bubble, it becomes this opportunity to continue to grow that diversity just on its own. Basically, kind of blowing those old messages out of the water and getting the all those other messages to become part of the culture. Okay, so how do we do this? I've been talking about the why of messaging, but how do we do this? So when we break it down, I like to think of this as like a really nice, simple model that we can use as a framework when we're designing these experiences in the classroom. So activity plus a message equals impact. And so it's just the power of adding that messaging into just an activity on its own is going to connect up to a totally different experience for the next generation, for the audience that you're talking to. These are four very effective messages that I would encourage everyone to get familiar with. These come from a study that was done by the National Academy of Engineering. It was called the Changing the Conversations campaign. And they went out and they figured out what are the messages that resonate with young students. And these were the four that came out of them. So this is not to say that you must say these exact words, but it's a great idea. Again, think of it almost as an inspiration to where you can go with your activities. So, the first one's around needing that diverse set of thinkers to solve these grand challenges. And there it is again, there's a place for you. So just offering this welcoming. Engineering and technology shaping the world around us. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So all the things that exist in our world and how engineering technology had an impact on that. What we're doing today and on the future, like what could it be? Let's imagine. What if? I really love number 3, turning ideas into reality. Kids are doing this naturally, right? They love to dream, and I hear it all the time, like, "Mommy, imagine we had this thing that could do this," and then they're trying to solve a way of like getting out of doing the dishes or something, but that's what they're doing. And so connecting them to the fact that engineers actually do that in real life. Like that's our jobs, to turn engineering into reality. We'll turn on some light bulbs for sure. And then the fourth one is really around like that human connection and that global, local impact that engineers have, and make a world of difference. So what I encourage you to do is just, like I said, get familiar with these as a starting point, and then it's that formula of take these, look at the activity you're doing, and see how you can connect them together. See how you can create a story around that activity that integrates some of these messaging strategies. So here's an example for the bridge building that I was talking about, going above and beyond bridge building. So you can, there's the traditional, if we just do the activity, we can talk about the math and science behind building a strong structure and, how, why are triangles a good way to build bridges, or why do we see triangles in bridges, and why is that? We can do all of that, and that is great. That is definitely part of the formula. But to create impact, we have to add that messaging component. So here's an example where you see in this case they connected up to a community that was in trouble, and they needed to get access to the other side of the Columbia River because there were important resources across the river. And so you can connect it up. In this case, I'm connecting it to that idea of how engineering and technology helps our community, because we need those resources. Maybe the hospital is over there, maybe the library is over there, maybe the grocery stores are over there. Like we need to be able to get access to that food, or to the hospital for emergencies, or maybe for learning, and people that love to read, they really want to be able to get to the library. Whatever, again, this is where we can pull on like what's relevant to the kids. To take this even further, it would be fantastic if there was an example of something in your own community. I've seen a lot of the bridge building activities When we do them in the spring is a great time because there's usually some sort of flooding incidents that are happening in our local communities or even or around the world that are like kind of on the news in a global scale, but the kids know about them. So you can use that to talk about how engineers can solve these problems, and then you can engage them with the activity and say, all right, well, the city of Trail in this case has commissioned us to come up with some designs to solve this problem for them. So, and let's go. So that's just to start to get you thinking about how to use this model of activity plus messaging equals impact. Some other resources for you here. National Engineering Month I mentioned when I mentioned earlier in the presentation, but National Engineering Month is a great platform. It happens in March every year. In Ontario specifically, they have some fantastic resources. I know because we used to support that campaign. We used to run National Engineering Month a few years back. But they're doing some amazing things. They continue to do some amazing things. And it's a great excuse. It's sort of a goal to work towards, right? March, we've still got it's a ways off still. So we can do some planning and preparing, but it's a great opportunity to connect up to some of these messages and use some of the resources and relevant local, even national things that are happening and raise awareness. So there's some links there. Please check it out when you have some time. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. Okay, so just briefly, what we were talking about here, importance of good messaging. So the why behind why we want to integrate messaging as a strategy into outreach, understanding the audience and connecting up that message with the activity to create impact. Going to spend a little bit of time here. I'll go through this. I'll go through this pretty quickly, I think, because because we have this in the program guide as well, so you can refer back to this if you need to. Teachers, again, I think this is something you have much more experience with than the volunteer engineers that are coming into your classroom, but always a good reminder to think that we're thinking about our audiences here and the different learning styles that they have. And so we want to think about not just learning styles, but also there's different intelligences, right? So Howard Gardner, he did some work and identified that humans express their intelligence in many different ways. So there's a bunch of them listed there, and probably you can relate to some of these, right? Like we're all human beings and we all experience things in different ways. So you might know that something, just talking, linguistic is going to be how you show the knowledge that you have and how you can connect in a different way. Maybe you're a superstar on the piano and so things come through musically for you. There's all these different ways that we can express our intelligence. So sometimes just being aware of this because you're in a classroom with 25 different types of little human beings is good to know that you don't always want to be looking for the same thing every time, the same kid to answer the same question the same way. These signs could be coming across in all these different ways and expressed differently. We talked about this a little bit. I hinted at it when we were talking about asking questions versus giving answers. So this is the idea of directed versus facilitated learning. So you can look through the examples on this slide, but that a directive approach of sort of being the more one way, standing up there, I'm the expert, I'm going to tell you, and you will, absorb and learn it because I said so type of an approach versus being in there and in it with them, being the one to really get engaged and asking questions and there's no reason we can't learn right along with the students, and that is arguably the more powerful way to create these impacts and experiences. And you know what? I mean, I don't know all the answers. I'm guaranteed some kid is going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to when I'm doing an activity in the class. So it is completely okay to kind of embrace that, and go along for the ride, and experience that right along with the students. I was going to take some time here to engage with all of you again about what ideas or questions you might have about facilitating a lesson. But in the interest of time, I think what we might do is we can come back to this in the Q&A section, because we're coming up to noon here. So I'm just going to skip ahead, because there's a few things I want to cover before we pause for a break. So the first one is around best practices. These are kind of some tips, tricks, experience from and learnings from experienced EIRs, but some things to get you thinking here. So just be realistic. Planning ahead is great. So teachers, I know you guys are fantastic at, you've got your year all planned out, you know what you have to do. So please make sure you're engaged with your EIR and give them the checkpoints of, this is the unit we're working on here, and then we're busy at this time of year, so we probably can't fit something in, but this is where we could really use you to hop over here. So planning ahead is really a best practice. Have fun. Like, I just want to make sure we always remind everybody to have fun. For the EIRs going into the classroom, if it's not something you've experienced in a while, it's a different environment than being in a boardroom or being, at work. And it's a lot of fun, and think of it as an opportunity to absorb some of that energy and the creativity. I've had some of the volunteers come up to me and tell me that they get inspired, they get ideas from the kids that they actually bring with them back to work, because it's so engaging and energizing for them. Be creative. Like I said, all the resources we have available to you, those are a starting point. We really encourage you to make this program your own. That contributes to some of the fun, right? As engineers, we're trained as problem solvers, and so being able to have this outlet, this opportunity to connect back into that creative side of our brain is really refreshing, and can be a lot of fun. And then working as a team. So I've touched on this before earlier in the presentation as well. We're handing you the reins. We're giving you guys the keys right now. We're here to support you as much as you need, but the ownership really lies with you, the teachers, and your EIR volunteer partner, to work together as a team and make this program an amazing experience for both of you and your students as well. Okay, financial support that is available, or that you can access, maybe is a better way to say it here. So volunteers, if you need to get your vulnerable sector police checks done, those usually, it really depends where you live, but are between $25 and $30. We will cover that expense for you for your first one. So if it's your first time in the program, which I think most of you on this call it is, we'll cover that expense for you. The form is available on the website. It's in that resources section at EIR.ca. But please get those to us by December. Because if you haven't submitted it to us by December, then it's got me worried that you're not in the classroom yet and we're really behind. We're already half a year through. So make sure you get those going. They can take some time, depending where you live, they can take some time to process. So please get those going, and let us know, and submit your expenses before December. Project materials. So we do allow EIRs to spend up to $300 per class on consumables. So for example, the Three Little Pigs project we looked at, you needed popsicle sticks, and what else was in there? Some straw, I think, and little Lego blocks. So, that we can probably find, if they don't have some of that already in the classroom and you need to go out and buy those materials, we do want to make sure that this is, that you have that resource available, that this is something that helps to make the program accessible. So you can spend up to that $300 per class. Those expenses get processed in the summertime. So save all your receipts. And then it's a very simple form. You submit it online at EIR.ca, again in the resources section. But you do have to have all that submitted to us before the end of July. And then we process those expenses in July and August as they're coming in. And then the other one, in terms of financial support, I mentioned National Engineering Month as a great resource. They actually offer funding. So encourage you to check out nemontario.ca. There's a section you can click on, like if you're a school and you want to host an event, you can click on that. If you're an EIR and you want to maybe do something even more broadly, like include your class or include maybe even your community, you can plan a NEM event and get some funding for that. So check that out and take advantage. Yeah, these are things that are here to support you and set all of you up for success for the program. Here's a list of a bunch of other support that we saw, a bunch of other support that we offer. So big list here. I'm not going to go through everything. Again, you can take a second and kind of read it. I will draw your attention to the LinkedIn groups, or the LinkedIn group. Sorry, we have a LinkedIn group. That's the place where I go if things come across my desk or my inbox that look like neat opportunities. Sometimes I'll just share them in the LinkedIn group. Hey, I came across this program. You guys should all check it out. So I'll put it in there. We are on Twitter, so encourage you to follow at EIR program, or you can follow us at Engineers of Tomorrow. I think our Twitter handle is at EngOfTom. And so just a great place to connect up. And then we do have a Facebook page as well that you can be a part of. And we're really looking to grow these as sort of a virtual water cooler. We really want these to be a place where, as an EIR, for example, you could go into the LinkedIn group and say, hey, I'm looking for some help. I need an activity on water. Does anyone know something, like has anyone done something they could share? And teachers, the same. Please reach out. If there's something unique that comes up, this is designed to be a spot for all of us to connect and support each other. There are more, so there's more than just the program guide available as well. So please check out the resources section of the EIR.ca site. I've got links up there to different websites that have some awesome resources and activity ideas. So check that all out. And don't underestimate Google. I use it all the time. Just if you're looking for something, Google, looking for, grade 5 hands-on activity for outer space or something like that. Yeah, so, and if there's something that's not on this list that you're looking for, please just send me an email. So this is a quick wrap up before we move into our break. So a couple of things, if you haven't done this already, please make sure you have your first classroom visit booked. Make sure, like I just mentioned, you'll connect with us online. And so what we're going to do right now is give you the opportunity, if both you as a teacher and your EIR partner match is online with us today, this is an opportunity for the two of you to connect, if you haven't done so already, to connect and have a conversation around expectations, plans for the year, set up some dates, get your calendars open. So take some time to do that. So I'm going to rely on you to call each other You should all have each other's email addresses. So if you, so you should be able to connect that way. If your partner match is not on with us today, then you're gonna maybe take some time to reflect on what we've talked about, and we will come back together at 1 o'clock. And at that time, we're just gonna kind of keep it more open. We're gonna do just a general kind of Q&A and give you an opportunity to engage with us if you need to get some questions answered. So with that, I'm gonna just pause our recording. Okay, so for Q&A, here we go. Let's get everybody unmuted. Oh, unmute all. All right. So you're unmuted on my side of things. And so, like I said, I'll just keep an eye on the chat box. And now is your opportunity. If there's something that you had a question about that we talked about earlier this morning, or maybe something we didn't cover, now is your chance. You've got my undivided attention for the moment. And obviously, if something comes up after and you're like, oh, shoot, I wish I had have asked whatever, please, please, please send me an email and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So I'll just be quiet for a few minutes and let all of you give a kind of a pause for if there's anyone who has something to say. So it looks like maybe we had someone just join back in. So just again, if you do want to say something, you might have to unmute yourself.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, Rebecca. This is Lauren. I did have a question, specifically because I've been paired with a high school and a like grade 11 and 12 audience. I was just wondering if there's any specific resources or advice for that kind of audience versus some of the stuff we've talked about today, which was more for grade school.
Yeah, great question. So one of the things, and thank you for reminding me, one of the things I did want to point out was I have seen it done very successfully where if you look at the resources we have in the program guide, and they might say that they're for a younger grade, with a little bit of tweaking, and usually that involves just adding in some complexity, like for example, making them do a budget or making them do a plan that then has to get maybe stamped, quote unquote, stamped by you as a professional engineer, and bringing in that conversation around licensing and what that means to it. You can usually get really creative and reuse some of those activities that maybe were originally designed for a younger audience and have still a pretty significant impact with the older kids as well. They seem like they're, and they are really young adults at that age, but in my experience, they still love the same kind of connection to that hands-on, and they might not want to admit it, but they are still really, kids at heart. So you can have some pretty good success out of that. That said, there are some of the other websites that are linked on our EIR.ca, the resources section. Some of those sites are really nicely designed to be searchable by grade as well, and like even by subject or time frame, or I think you can even put in like hands-on versus presentation. There's some really nice filterable criteria on some of those sites, so that's a really great spot in terms of sourcing activities. Is that what you were looking for, Lauren, or were you looking for even like more broadly, like engaging differently with high school students versus elementary?
No, that's kind of what I was hoping for to get a feel for what we know is effective. So I'll check out some of those links.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. So I'll give you guys another few minutes. If something comes up, please don't be shy. There's no, um, all questions are good questions. Um, and probably if you're thinking it, the rest are thinking the same thing. So I'll give you a few more minutes, but I recognize it is one of our last Sundays of summer before the temperature really starts to drop here. So I don't want to hold everybody up for too long on this beautiful Saturday. And uh, and I hope everyone is feeling a little more comfortable and confident. Maybe we've got some questions answered about the program, um, and feeling ready to get right into it. Okay, well, like I said, I'm not going to leave us all uh, hanging on the line here. I will take that to mean that the silence to mean that we've done an excellent job in introducing you a little more deeply into the EIR program. Welcome aboard to everybody. And again, as I have been stressing throughout the last few hours, please let us know if you have any other questions, and please let us know when things are going well too. We love to see pictures. We love to hear from the EIRs and the teachers. Um, We love it when we see, like notes that the students send to their engineers. We get all kinds of, we love to see all kinds of that great stuff happening. Connect with us in all the other ways we mentioned through all our social media platforms. Because you're part of the Engineers of Tomorrow family when you join the EIR program. And so you're part of something big here, and we welcome you. So with that, I will sign off for the day, and I look forward to connecting with all of you in the near future. Have a wonderful rest of your day.